This is Criteria. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Criteria, the Catholic Film Podcast. I'm here with Thomas Miras. I'm James Majewski, and we're talking about Decalogue 4.
Yep, Decalogue is, of course, the 10-part series of films made by Polish director Krzysztof Kieślowski in the late 80s. They're inspired by the Ten Commandments, so this film, I suppose, is the fourth commandment, honor thy father and thy mother, and takes us to some very strange places.
Yes, we did Decalogue 3 on video, so this will not have been the first Decalogue film that we're giving the video treatment here on YouTube. Yep. But we also did Decalogue 1 and Decalogue 2 on the podcast. Right. Those are available in audio form.
Yeah, but they're also on the YouTube in the playlist here.
Yep.
The Decalogue, the Criteria playlist on our YouTube channel.
So I'm already buying time a little bit because there's like a part of me that does not want to dive into discussing this film.
That's how I felt even before I rewatched it last night. I read the screenplay and it reminded me we're starting to get into increasingly uncomfortable territory with these decalogues. I think 4, 5, and 6, from what I remember, are probably the hardest to watch.
Yeah.
Of all of them.
Yeah.
So we're going to be getting into some difficult material. Also, not just that though, but this isn't really my favorite one.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Maybe something will come out of the conversation and make us like it more, because that's how I felt about 2. I wasn't crazy about 2, but
right off the bat, I'll say that, I think that it is significant that my response to this film is in part a reticence to discuss it, like an aversion to going deep into it, because this is in fact what the characters in this film are dealing with.
Yeah. Well, let me.
Yeah, you want to lay down a synopsis?
Well, I was going to just respond to that first. So I was thinking about this last night because I've been watching a lot of Kieślowski's early films, and he was a documentarian starting off. For the first decade or decade and a half or 2 decades or whatever of his film career.
Jestem brzydką brunetką. Chciałabym nie chodzić do szkoły I mieć fajne dziecko.
And he never really had that much intention of going into feature films, but he started realizing that he didn't want to hurt people by having them reveal their secrets, on camera.
No każdy człowiek ma do czegoś, wie pan, zamiłowanie. No ja mam, proszę pana, zamiłowanie do tej kontroli. Mam zamiłowanie kontrolować tych swoich kolegów, tych wędkarzy. Zabieramy kije, proszę pana, którzy nie mają opłacone karty czy siecie, proszę pana, zabieramy. No wie pan, ja można powiedzieć, mam takie hobby, do tego jestem, wie pan, przyzwyczajony po prostu.
And this was also obviously in a kind of an emotional or psychological way, but also just in a very practical way, living in communist Poland.
Right.
Right. He mentioned a situation. He filmed a piece called, I think it's just called Railway Station, and it's just like commuters in a railway station, waiting for their train, looking tired, and stuff that's going on in the station. And after he did this film, it was confiscated for a while because it turned out that some woman who had murdered a relative or something had gone and taken a train after committing a murder while he was filming.
Oh.
And so they were trying to use his film as evidence to see if they could catch her on camera.
Wow.
And so he talks about it in his book Kieślowski on Kieślowski, and I forget if they did catch her, but I think it was unsure whether his footage had helped or whether they actually found her on his footage or not. But the point was, even though he's not against the idea of catching a murderer, he just was uncomfortable with the idea that his films would play a part in any of that kind of thing, you know, being an aide to the police or any of this stuff. So he started moving into fictional work for that reason, because he felt like I can have them say or do whatever I want them to say or do, and I don't have to worry about, hurting them or having them expose what should remain private.
Right.
And it's interesting because obviously like it's not, fiction is not entirely without this risk either when you're dealing with actors, right? And, we could talk about, in this film.
There's kind of a nod to that. There's a scene with, so one of our main characters is a young lady in theater school, and there's a scene in her acting class where she's asked to get really intimate, really up close with another performer, but then also is kind of put into a kind of scandalous position with her instructor.
Powtarzając dobranoc, nie dałbym ci zasnąć. Widzisz, że umiesz patrzeć? Teraz dopiero jesteś skupiona.
And now, like, you can say maybe there's like already a relationship of trust between her and the instructor. We don't know that. Like, we're just seeing this one sort of snapshot into the class, but I think that it suggests to us this kind of danger, even for performers, of like going into these intimate or hidden places in performance.
I've heard this film described as being about like boundaries between parents and their children, and like respecting the boundaries of one or the other. And I think that also connects with Kieślowski's decision to move away from making documentaries. So I just thought it was an interesting connection.
Right. Yeah, well, and you see the sort of theme of boundaries operating in that acting class scene. It's funny, like when it cuts to that scene in the film, I immediately knew what it was before even anybody like spoke a word. Because I went to school for acting, and that experience of sitting in a room with a circle of people and like the silence that dominates before someone actually gets up to perform. Like it's clear when we cut that the instructor is basically asked like, all right, who's up?
And also we've seen acting classes, workshops shown in movies and TV shows. And it's kind of like, when somebody shows a Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in a film, you immediately know what it is because there's like a circular layout usually, or there's people sitting in chairs, and there's just kind of a vibe where you immediately pick up before anybody says anything, what it is.
But it's that like what I'm trying to draw attention to is that like charged moment right before someone speaks,
right?
That charged moment where it's stillness and the question is sort of hanging in the air. Who's going to go up? Who's going to speak? And it's telling that our main character says, well, I guess I'll go as usual.
Right.
She's clearly like the one who's always going up first.
Yeah.
Putting herself out there in front of the class.
And she doesn't really put herself out there in this scene.
Not in the scene,
structure.
Not in the scene, but certainly in the scene that takes place later at the home, right? So what we've kind of been dancing around a little bit so far is that there are some heavy themes of incest,
right?
I mean, there's no actual incest that transpires, and we can take solace in that.
Yes.
But there's certainly like this tension. The film centers on this young woman, Anna or Anka.
Yeah, Anka's like the diminutive version of that.
Yeah. And her father, is he named Yarek? Yarek is her boyfriend. Sorry. So it's her and her father, and right from the beginning, right from the opening shots, man, I don't know if you felt the same way, but immediately the way Kieślowski introduces us to these characters, there's immediately a sense of ambiguity that predominates in this relationship. There's tension.
There's like a certain lack of boundaries already that you can tell. It's not like it's just something that like puts you off just a little bit,
Yeah, there's also suspicion and like jealousy.
Right.
She gets a phone call from her boyfriend, and the father listens. On the other receiver. So already in the opening moments, we have tension, suspicion, intimacy, but also kind of a collapsed sense of boundaries. And then that only amplifies throughout the film. Mainly when Anka confronts her father with the knowledge that he's not actually her father.
Right. Or the seeming knowledge.
The seeming knowledge, yeah. Because all is not as it seems on many levels.
Yeah.
Which makes this film kind of difficult to talk about, because it kind of takes you, as an audience member, like, it kind of is really like a topsy-turvy experience. Like, things are kind of being flipped on their head more than once.
Yeah. And it's never clear, like, what everybody's motives is.
Right. Even by the end of the film, there's still like there's a lot of questions about motives. I think that motivation is maybe a little clearer on the daughter's part than it is on the father's. I walked away feeling like a lot more questions about the father's motivations in this. But with both of them, basically the whole film, after this confrontation, the whole film is just one long conversation, really, between her and her father, where these sort of boundaries are pushed, not so much in act as in how do I want to say, like manifestation or disclosing, like the struggles of a heart, So Anka's mother is dead. She's been dead since 5 days after her birth. So she's never known her mother, but her mother left a letter behind for her daughter, supposedly telling her that Mikhail, that's the father's name, is not her real father. Now she discovers this letter. We think that she's opened it, read it, the contents of which Mikhail himself wasn't even sure of, but he always had a suspicion that he wasn't her real father. And anyway, so when she confronts him, it basically creates an opening for them to begin to interrogate and expose what has otherwise been kind of repressed or confused, not wholly understood emotions between the two of them, specifically romantic, or at least what they think may be romantic attractions. But, I'm not entirely sold by the end of it that they're even understanding their own conflict. For instance, the father speaks about jealousy, like a jealousy that he feels toward her boyfriends, and a pain that he's felt, that he's always respected her freedom. She can go and do what she wants, and that he'll suffer it. And then basically in light of this discovery that he's not her real father, he interprets that as a romantic jealousy. He says specifically that it was more than the kind of jealousy that you would expect a father to have for their daughter. But then again, who's he to say?
So you think that he's like reinterpreting that in light of
I think that there's reason to think that, because who is he to say, that what he's experienced isn't in fact the experience of a father's jealousy,
That's a good point.
And that who is he to say that it might not somehow be also bound up with like a weird, at least in his instance, with like a weird tension that he might misconstrue as a romantic one, Of course, I'm not saying that this is the case for all fathers. I I don't know much about Freudian psychology, but it seems to me like Freud might have a field day with a film like this. But at least in his instance, I think that there is a struggle to sort of contextualize or understand the feelings that he has for his daughter, and that for whatever reason, in light of this, consequent to this discovery that he's not her real father, there's a reevaluation that's going on, I think that for her too, now her perspective is different than the father's in these interrogations, right? Because she knows all along that, spoiler alert, she hasn't actually, in fact, opened the letter. She doesn't know what the secret is that her mother wanted her to know. And so she's really kind of testing the relationship. She's coming at this from a very different perspective. Funnily enough, I've been watching like public domain interrogation videos on YouTube with like a criminal psychologist sort of explaining what's going on, what tactics are being employed by interrogators, or how the accused might be responding differently based on if they're guilty or innocent. And I think that that's kind of going on here. She's acting as a kind of interrogator. She's the one who's in the power position because she knows that she's lying. The father, on the other hand, is put into a position where the truth is really being demanded of him. She makes a deal with him. How about every time you lie and I call you out on it, you have to tell the truth. Mm-hmm. So the tables are really kind of turned on him. Like he's in this defensive, maybe defensive is the wrong word, but he's in this sort of weaker stance, this weaker posture.
Yeah, I now that you said that about the possibility of him reinterpreting past feelings in light of this possible revelation, I kind of wonder if she could be doing the same thing to some extent. I mean, she talks about when I started sleeping with boys, I felt like I was betraying someone, and now I've realized it was you.
Yeah.
And then she kind of like says stuff that kind of like sexualizes that as like, that they were like a sexual stand-in for him or something. But what the first thing she says, I think, is like, I thought I was betraying someone, and now I've realized it's you.
But,
so,
it's like, yeah, that's a really excellent point. Like, is she really realizing that? Or is she looking for a scapegoat, for a stinging conscience?
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking the second time we were watching it. Like, there she is betraying a father, and there might be some sense in which she's betraying her actual, biological father. I think that's what she says there is normal. Mm-hmm. She sexualizes it, but that base thing of feeling like you're betraying your parents,
because a father is involved in this somehow, and that's acknowledged by the mother of her boyfriend. She goes over to her boyfriend's home, and he's not home, so she speaks with his mother and basically expresses interest in marrying him. Mm-hmm. And her boyfriend's mother, the first thing she asks is, well, what about your father?
Yeah.
And now, I mean, she's not asking that because she's aware of this sort of like weird thing that's going on. She's acknowledging what I think, everybody really acknowledges, that somehow the father does have a part to play in mm-hmm. this. So yeah, I'm glad too that you brought up, God the Father, because I can't watch a movie like this that so much deals with, the role of the father, the identity of the father, without thinking about sort of the broader implications of that, whether culturally, so thinking about, tradition, belonging, history, but then also, of course, like our ultimate identity as children of a loving father.
And the first two films are about fatherhood,
I mean, even the third film is fathers have been central to all of the Decalogue films that we've seen so far on this podcast on this channel. In fact, we see...
I would say Fatherhood to me is more central to the second film than Motherhood is, even though the main character is the mother.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. I agree. And we see one of these father figures reappear in the elevator of this film.
Yeah.
The doctor.
From number 2.
Yep.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
At CatholicCulture.org, we've just begun our fall fundraising campaign. Every year, contributors like you have helped us to reach our challenge grant, every dollar of which is matched by a generous donor. This year's matching grant is unprecedented. All gifts up to $100,000 will be matched. This is incredible, but success in this campaign is also critical. CatholicCulture.org's income was hit hard during the pandemic. Contributions were down 25% during the summer months, and we've lost many monthly pledges from those who have been hurt economically. This year's fall campaign is key, in particular, to continuing our complete line of Catholic podcasts into 2021. These podcasts, like all of our resources at CatholicCulture.org, have costs, yet are made available free of charge around the world. Our material is widely reused in social media, other websites, as well as on television and radio programs. Every year, CatholicCulture.org reaches tens of millions of Catholics and potential converts. Every year, we're supporting priests, religious, catechists, and the laity. And every year, we ask you for your help in this fall campaign. At CatholicCulture.org, we know that Catholic solidarity is always the key, so we ask you to join us in this work by your prayers and by your generous contribution. Your gift will be matched and count twice. Please visit CatholicCulture.org/donate/audio to contribute today. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that now that we've seen 4 films, I feel like you can start to get a sense of larger concerns or like overarching themes.
Yeah.
Certainly there are aesthetic similarities that run across these films. I sort of what struck me visually with Decalogue 4 is how beautiful it manages to be, even though it takes place almost entirely inside of this home in just a conversation between 2 people. You know, it's really beautifully lit, lots of like, you know, high contrast light and darkness. The compositions inside of the frames, especially when the frame gets in really close between 2 people, whether it's between her and her boyfriend or her and the acting teacher, and then of course her and her father. There's one moment where the 2 of them start singing like a little lullaby from her childhood, and both of their faces are kind of obscured. We're seeing her in profile, if I recall, but then the father is up close to her, and we only see half of his face sort of peeking out from the side of her. So there's like the 2 faces kind of cohering together in a really visually interesting way. So you know, there's been great cinematography in all 4 of these films, and this was no exception. But it was definitely much more muted, especially if you compare it against Decalogue 3, with its really striking use of colors and then going to all of these different locations. We described it as an odyssey. I'm talking about Decalogue 3 here. This was much more, you know, an interior drama.
And we start out with these, and the colors we start out with in the apartment also are very kind of muted, off-white, pastel, kind of like boring colors. As it goes on, there's more shots in the darkness, but it starts out pretty bland, you know, in terms of the color.
It's definitely like a kitchen sink drama, isn't that the term? I think that's the term.
I don't know.
But yeah, you know, it's appropriate, the setting, given that so much of the meat of this plot is what's taking place in the heart of the daughter and of the father.
Yeah, you know, you were talking about whether you felt that it resolved, at the end, or that we really know what's going on by the end of it. And, Nathan was talking in our last episode on Decalogue, was talking about his dislike of Kieślowski's on-the-nose use of symbolism.
Yeah.
And if you're going to go for it kind of thing. And here our chief symbol, I think, is the glasses. Or no?
No.
Or her eyesight. That's the most overt, like, symbolic kind of, like, metaphor.
I was going to say that the chief symbol is the canoe. Because another connection to the other episodes, we see our mysterious observer.
Right.
And we see him canoeing across a river toward Anka when she's sort of out in the woods by herself, deciding about whether to open this letter from her mother or not. He gets out of the canoe and begins to carry it. Mm-hmm. And we don't see him again after that until the end, where he walks by carrying the canoe again. To me, that was like he's functioning a lot more directly in this film than in the other ones. First off, because it seems like his presence actually has an effect on the character in question. Whereas in the other ones, he really was kind of a passive observer. In this one, his observing her seems to have a direct sort of consequence.
Yeah. And she's gone out there to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
And she sees this guy staring at her, and then she doesn't open the letter.
Right. She's about to open it, and then she doesn't.
The one interesting thing in the little essay in our booklet that came with our Blu-ray of the film is he mentions that because there's an envelope inside another envelope, it's like she almost gets the chance to make the choice over again, because she cuts the envelope open and then there's another envelope inside of it. So it turns out that she has yet to actually make the decision.
Well, you know what's interesting? The first thing she's done is disobeyed her father, because her father has written on the outside of this envelope to be opened only after my death.
Yes.
So she disobeys her father. Then
her mother is inside.
That's
kind of interesting in itself.
Yeah.
That, like, the command from the father is on the outside and then sheltering this letter from her mother.
Yeah.
But just if I can go back to the glasses, the eyesight, it is the most overt kind of, like, obvious symbol of, like, she's seeing something or understanding something that she didn't before. But I don't know that it really, like, pays off. I don't know that we get the sense that they really understand themselves very well. I think that the resolution that we have at the end, if anything, is that, like, they're not going to have sex, and, like, I don't think she's going to continue to, like, provoke him in this way that she's been doing.
I think that there is some closure that happens at the end. I think that there is a final acceptance of their relationship as father and daughter, regardless of what the letter says.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, but I don't know that they understand their kind of like psychology that much better.
They might just go on just continuing to repress these things, and honestly, like, that's fine. Like, if that's what you got to do, then, like, repress that. But, like,
I don't know. I don't know if that's good.
Well, I don't know. What would you say?
Well, like, repression is, like, not dealing with it, and then it, like, comes out in, like, weird ways. But, like, you have to
maybe suppression.
Suppression is okay.
Like, so it's a willed decision to, like, suppress this. And exercise.
Suppression is fine.
Okay. Repression is when you're not talking about it, when you're not acknowledging,
when you're not admitting it.
Right.
So it's like, no, I don't have these feelings. You know, like, suppression is like, I have these feelings and I'm choosing to.
In fact, her father is in an act of repression. Even when she begins to confront him about these things, she says, how she felt this sort of sense of betrayal when she was with her boyfriends. He says, I never felt that.
Yeah.
She says, you're lying. And he says, yeah, I'm lying. So
that's
I think
interesting too, because it goes along with his decision to, like, I don't have a right to tell you not to do things, which is obviously wrong.
Yeah.
And he says that because he's afraid that it'll be jealousy. if he does that. So it like goes both ways. He's like denying the jealousy that he does have, and then like not doing his duty as a father because he's afraid it'll be jealousy. And I'm certain, I mean, like I've heard many people, like many fathers or expectant fathers, or like I'm like out in the secular world, comedians, you know, if you listen to an interview, they're talking about how they're going to have a kid. I'm not saying anything about comedians in general. I'm just like, this is
an example.
Yeah. So talking about like, oh yeah, well, you can't let them, you like, you know, well, let's talk about the elephant in the room. I don't know why he is, but Louis C.K., the disgraced, the late Louis C.K. You know, he would. I remember hearing him one time talk about in an interview or something, just like, yeah, you like your daughter's gonna like, for lack, just to put it, you know, mildly, she's going to like start having sex with boys, you know, and like you have, it's like, and there's nothing you can do about it, and you just have to accept it, and like. It's none of your business and all this stuff. And that's like a very typical attitude where fathers feel like they don't have the right to like, you know, control their daughters. Like,
well, there's just even more broadly speaking, down. Thomas, even more broadly speaking, there's a lot of fathers who just don't think that they're the head of a household, right? Who just don't think that they have any right to exercise any authority at all. Yeah. Right. And I think that we get the impression that this father is kind of a father like that. Yeah. And in fact, I think we have reason to think that her frustration as a daughter comes in a large part from that. She's angry at him
for being accepting,
but also
and indifferent.
Exactly, but also for trying to resolve things without having to do anything. I think that's a quote that I wrote down.
That's right. She says that. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. All right.
Yeah. Well, so he moves from repression to suppression through this film. Yes. She moves from a confused relationship with her father to, at the end, she opens the window and calls out after him, "Dad, Dad." And her final one is "Daddy." You really don't say that to anyone other than your daddy. Right. So I think that there is a sense in which there is some real closure. Maybe not everything is like but none of these films have been like, I think so. Tightly.
I think so. I think you're right.
Resolved.
Yeah. Well, but no, it's very interesting that she specifically resents him for his like laissez-faire kind of attitude. And I mean, like, take note, you know, fathers, take note if you're, you know, maybe somebody who's listening to this who, you know, this is a Catholic podcast. We have a certain view of fatherhood, you know, and of sexual morality and all of that. But like, if you're listening to this, like, take note, the character in this film, she's resentful of the fact that her father doesn't set boundaries. Mm-hmm. You know, she's resentful of the fact, like, his acceptance comes to her as indifference and almost as a callousness, I think, specifically. So, you know, she mentions that she had an abortion and she didn't want to like give him what he wanted, like his ability to, I don't know what she thought he wanted her to have her baby for, but like,
so that the tension between them would be resolved.
Right. Okay. Without him having to do anything. Yeah. And then she, you know, didn't tell him about it because she didn't want to hear from him. Like, yeah, go ahead and have an abortion. Like, well, it's not my business, you know? Right. So like, yeah, I mean, that's a real thing, you know. Children want their parents to care, to be involved. They want them to exercise their authority. They want to be protected. They want to be guided. So I think that, you know, to simply like write it off as like this like patriarchal oppression, the idea that like a father would like prevent his daughter from sleeping around, you know, at a young age is like, I think that's just really blind, and it plays into a lot of selfish impulses that men have. Yeah. 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 I mean, you know, at the end of the day, it's a unwillingness to put yourself out there. There is a kind of vulnerability in exercising your authority. Yes. And vulnerability is a theme in this as well. You know, that's put on display really clearly in the acting class, you know, because it's all about, you know, being vulnerable. He's trying to push her to be vulnerable. And then later she's pushing her father to do the same. But it also has to do with like her indifference to her boyfriend because she's totally like tied up with her father.
Right.
You know,
I see that
in the class,
in the acting class. She's acting with her.
I
boyfriend.
see it even more as that than her like unwillingness to be vulnerable in the acting class, that she's completely disconnected, and that like all of her vulnerability and emotional energy is tied up with her father.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that I mean, one, like, as cringy as this film is, you know, and really anytime you're dealing with the subject of incest, I think that pretty universally people cringe.
Right.
And rightly so. As cringy as it is, I think that for all that, it's still very, you know, psychologically and spiritually rich even. You know, this is not a straightforward or sort of caricature of, you know, and at the end of the day, you know, you can walk away thinking that these two people don't really have a romantic attraction toward one another. These are two people who are struggling to understand their roles, you know, as a father or as a daughter, and how they relate to one another, especially in the absence of a mother. And also especially with the question of actual biological relatedness, right? By the end of the film, they decide that that's a non-issue. They burn the actual letter and decide not to find out, you know, is he my real father or not? And I, you know, psychologists might say maybe burning the letter is not like the most healthy way of dealing with this, but in one sense, you know, it acknowledges that it's really not about, you know, am I biologically related to you or not? You know, this is about something that runs deeper, that cuts across the heart. He is her father, and he acknowledges that by, you know, not taking advantage of his daughter when she's, you know, confused and hurting, and reaching out for this, you know, terrible, sinful, you know, suggestion.
Right.
He defends her chastity, you know. But also for her in calling him daddy, you know, that's literally a question that she asks him. You know, what should I call you now? He says, I don't know. Well, she gives the answer at the end of the film, daddy.
Right.
She asks him, where are you going? And he says, to get some milk. And I feel like you can see in her face the relief that he wasn't leaving her.
Right.
You know, that he was going to get some milk. He was going to come right back. Yeah.
So do you think the canoe, do you have anything in mind as far as like what that might be about?
No, I mean, I noticed it only because it's such a striking visual.
Right.
You know, it's this really just pale white canoe.
Yeah.
And when he's walking with it, you know, it totally obscures him, and it looks like this, you know, walking monolithic thing.
Right.
I mean, he's crossing a river, going from one side to another. He's moving from one mode of transportation to another. I mean, you know, the canoe is good for rowing across a river, but then it doesn't do you any good when you get to land. It becomes a burden that you have to carry with you. I don't know. You know, I'm riffing here. Like there's a question about the father. Like, does he want her to stay a child forever? Is this part of like grieving that his relating to his daughter has to change now as an adult? You know, like, these are possible things. But it is a kind of oblique.
Well, I have to say, you know, I like this a lot more now that we've talked about it for a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm getting more out of it.
That's been the pattern really with these films. Like the first time you watch them, they are kind of confounding and unsettling. All of them have been unsettling to some degree, but this one perhaps the most of all. But I think that it's to Kieślowski's credit that he's able to render it so realistically and so sympathetically, and with such, complicatedness, that at the end, I strangely you end up somehow kind of being able to tolerate and entertaining it. We've done a good job.
Let that be a lesson to you, Celia. That you sometimes you can't just walk away from a film and be like, I don't know what that was. You got to hash it out, discuss it with someone. Because I've watched plenty of films where I'm like, okay, I watched that.
Yeah.
And then I didn't talk about it to anybody. I didn't really think about it.
Right.
And, this is very important.
Yeah. Yeah. And you really don't do yourself any service by approaching, at least films that are intended to be works of art, poetry like that. It's fine if you watch a Marvel movie, I suppose,
Right.
But yeah, I'm glad that's partly what we're doing here on this podcast is trying to, this is as much an education for me as I am hoping that it will be for people watching these films along with us and listening to us talk about them. It's like we all want to get better at attending to things and contemplating them and being able to extract something from them. Right.
Yeah. Well, very interesting. Yeah, because when I first watched this, I was like, it just seemed like a lot of kind of like psychological mush. You couldn't really discern their motivations. And I think, I think his lack of engagement as like an authority figure kind of gives me a way into this, understanding these characters.
Yeah.
Anything else to talk about, or?
The one last thing is that, I'm a father now, and I'm, doing as good a job as anybody, I guess, which is to say that I'm making tons of mistakes. And so one of the things that I find myself thinking about from time to time is that, look, I'm not your father. I am, yes, I'm your father, but I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to fail you. I'm going to make mistakes. There is a father who will not fail you, who will not break your trust. And I'm going to do my level best to be a worthy stand-in for that, for at least the time that I need to be. But my number one goal is to get you and all of my children, all of my future children, any future children I'm blessed to have, to know this father. And, I wonder if there isn't something, if there isn't an echo of that in this father's reluctance for her to know who her true father is, that he controls that information. He holds it back from her. He says,
Chciałem ci dać ten list, kiedy skończysz 10 lat. Skończyłaś 10 lat, okazało się, że jesteś za mała. Potem chciałem ci go dać, kiedy skończysz 15 lat. Skończyłaś 15, okazało się, że jesteś za duża. Wtedy włożyłem go do tej żółtej koperty.
So there's this kind of standing in between her and God. And that's something that I never want to do as a father, is obscure the face of the true father and basically put myself in between him and where he's going.
Yeah, good. I think the next one we're going to do is Metropolis, another silent film, German expressionist sci-fi film by Fritz Lang. And
we've been doing a lot of silent films. We're going to run out of silent films on this list.
Yeah.
I guess that's fine. Front load them, But
so we'll be talking about that with my friends Carl and Scott from the Online Great Books podcast and the Music and Ideas podcast.
Very cool.
They have great chemistry. They're good guys, and they're adept at discussing things and drawing things forth. So we're looking forward to that'll be our first with 4 people.
Yeah. Wow. That'll be
interesting.
That'll be cool.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening. Please, if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and these come out every 2 weeks. So you can expect Metropolis, and I guess after that, we're going to be doing our special Christmas episode.
Special Christmas plans.
I won't spoil the plans, but we will have a special Christmas episode out with a very special Christmas guest. And should we talk about Fat Man on this podcast?
Fat Man?
Mel Gibson's Fat Man.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm going to see it. So then we can decide whether to talk about it. But
there's a movie. Mel Gibson has a movie coming out that he's in called Fat Man, where he plays Santa, and he's fending off an assassin who was sent by a boy who's angry that he only got coal.
God bless Mel Gibson, man.